समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले. दिस इज द राइट टाइम.
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया.
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले. दिस इज द राइट टाइम.
अब समझा.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Welcome to the WorldView with Swasti. Today I'm joined by somebody very special. He's visiting India from Germany, Mr. Jürgen Hart. He is right now a member of parliament at the Bundestag, which is the German parliament. And he has been an MP since 2009. So he has a lot of political experience. Now, he's not just that, he's also a foreign policy spokesperson for the CDU, which is the Christian Democratic Union, the current party which is in power in Germany, along with the coalition. And any briefing that the Bundestag requires, especially on India, he is the person to go to. He's also been the government's coordinator from 2014 to 2018 with the Angela Merkel's government for Transatlantic Cooperation. So welcome to India, Mr. Hart. What a pleasure it is to be joined by you. And first, tell me, what brings you to India?
First, I would like to thank Swasti for the opportunity to talk to you about India. I am a foreign affairs spokesperson of my political group, the CDU-CSU, which now has the Chancellor and the Foreign Minister in Germany. But I'm also the rapporteur on the German-Indian relations, and therefore I travel to India minimum once a year, normally in August, participating in the Red Fort speech of the Prime Minister in the last 3 years, and meeting the Foreign Minister and traveling around in the country and taking touch and feel to Indian politics and economics and civil society.
Right. But this time around, you also traveled quite a bit, you know. You're just coming from Kashmir, aren't you?
Yes, I was in Srinagar because I want to show solidarity with the people there. On the April 22nd, there was this terrible terror attack in Pahalgam.
That's right.
In this beautiful landside, one of the most beautiful places in India, if not in Asia as a whole, with 26 men killed. But the terrorists that did not only destroy the life of the 26 men and their families, they also destroy the hope and perspective to future for hundreds of thousands of peoples.
That's right.
In Kashmir, their trust on the tourism as a most important economic pillar for growth and prosperity in that country and in that part of the country, and therefore I visited there. This site, I think I was the first politician from abroad going there. I had strong and good support from the Jammu Kashmir police and the authorities in the region. I had the chance to talk to the chief minister.
Right.
And for me, it was good to see that and to get an impression about what the challenge is.
No, we really sort of appreciate that empathy and understanding at this time, because the attack on Pahalgam was heinous, unfortunate to say the least. But you also visiting India, Mr. Hart, at a time when the entire world has been sent in a tizzy by Mr. Donald Trump. And you know the reason why. As you're in India, you may have heard that Mr. Donald Trump has singled out India by putting punitive tariffs on us. And so the total tariffs that we have now, not just 25% that was initially announced, but also an additional 25%. But we understand that India is not the country, no, not the only country on whom Donald Trump has done this. Donald Trump's attitude to trade and tariffs has been a problem ever since he's come back to the White House. So before I come to and discuss a bit about India per se, what do you make of his policy of indiscriminately tariffing partners especially?
The challenge is that, from my point of view, President Trump has a big misunderstanding on global economy and trade issues. He sees the trade deficit of US as a negative effect on US, but the truth is the trade deficit is mainly due to the fact that American people are so much richer than the rest of the world, and therefore others, Germans, Indians, and others, Chinese, do things, produce things that Americans can use to keep their life standard and to keep their welfare and their country prosperous, and therefore his idea to balance the trade deficit will not only lead to extra cost for people in America, because extra tariffs need to be paid by those who import. And if you import more than you export, at the end, your people are paying more and not the others. I think he will see that there will be an inflation and also maybe a reduction of the level of life standard in US. And hopefully in 6, 12, 24 months, we see a rollback of that policy. But unfortunately, a lot of things might happen up to that point. And we have tariffs of 15% since yesterday on products from European Union to US. You have those 25 plus this 25 extra penalty tariff due to the imports from Russia. I talked to the foreign minister on the day when Trump announced to put extra penalty tariffs on India, that 3 years ago, the US president and US government was encouraging India to take oil from Russia to not to compensate that what this might be turbulence on the oil market worldwide. I remember several years where India was asking for military equipment, but also other equipment from the rest of the world, US and Germany and Europe, and we were reluctant. And therefore, the role that Russia plays for the Indian economy, it's Indian done, but also affected by a lot of developments in the last decades. I see that India wants to go back from this single dependency in energy, for example, and also in military weaponry that also mainly comes from Russia in the last decades. But it's a long way to go, and we can encourage India to do that, and we can encourage India to present a plan to the US president how to come away from that, as we do in Europe. We have reduced our imports from Russia by 3/4.
That was my next question to you, because the perception here is that from India's perspective, of course, I would come to the wonderful role that has been played by your defense minister, Mr. Boris Pistorius, and I will talk to about that. But before that, there is a perception in India and the sense of victimization, because as you mentioned, that West was, and especially the United States, was absolutely fine India purchasing Russian oil because it helped also stabilize the price of the Brent crude. But what makes it worse is that there is a perception in India that while Europe also buys the same Russian oil and perhaps more in quantity than us, Europeans have not been given that punitive tariffs, and it's just India. So do you think this perception is correct, or do you think there are more details that should be also conveyed with this? I just want your thoughts on that.
First, I would like to say that immediately after the illegal attack on Ukraine by Russia in February 2022, we in Europe thought about how to become more independent from Russian energy and other things, and we reached huge progress on that. For example, in Germany, the import of oil and gas to Germany from Russia is now zero, and it was concerning gas, it was more than 50% of our total use, and you can expect the economy as big as the Indian economy consumes a lot of natural gas. We reduced it significantly. We have some states in the European Union, some member states that still trust on Russian oil and also on Russian gas. By the way, the best friend, so to say, in Europe for Donald Trump, the Prime Minister of Hungary,
Mr. Viktor Orban.
Viktor Orban, he is one of the importers of those products from Russia. For Germany, I can say we are out of energy from Russia. We are also out of most of the business with Russia. And the European Union stated that they will come also totally independent from Russian imports in the latest 27.
Yes.
This is an ambitious target. And this is probably also an answer that India could give in the current situation, to say we will not step out from one day to another because it's not possible, but we will phase it out.
Yeah, no, I understand that point because, of course, that's, I think, one part which is not understood also well in India because of, the sheer unfamiliarity of the theatre. But could you also just help me understand how much money do you think, or how many resources do you think a country like Germany, which is the biggest economy in Europe, has spent on this diversification? Because as I understand, the dependence on Russian energy was so huge that the diversification away from there and building of LNG terminals would have costed a lot of money. I mean, what do you think that the German government has spent on it all?
I have not the figure in my mind. It was not only the German government, but also the German consumers and the German industry. And we have a weakness in the German economy in the last 3 years due to wrong decisions of the former government, but also due to the effect of high energy prices. I think hundreds of billions over the 3 years that we have to pay extra.
Right.
And unfortunately, this was necessary. We were able to make sure that enough gas and oil was available all the time in the first winter after Russia invaded parts of Ukraine. But we were in danger, and we had fear that probably we might cut down energy consumption. This was not necessary, but the price was high.
Right. And also I understand that Germany has also changed considerably under Chancellor Merz. Not many people perhaps in India would know that there was a constitutional debt brake on defense spending in Germany, which has now been removed. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? And how does that change Germany's security orientation within Europe for Ukraine and the rest of the world? And then, of course, we come to India as well.
We have strict regulation on debt in German budgets, not only on the federal budget, but also on the state budget and on the budget on the regional level, because we want to hinder that our currency might come into inflation, and that states of the European Union, maybe also member states in the Eurozone, might come in a crucial situation as it was 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when we had this big euro crisis. Therefore, we imposed this debt brake on a national level, very strict. On European level also, we have something like that, a stabilization pact. Due to the current situation we decided to lift this limitation for a debt for the field of the budget of the defense minister, and for some minor extra things also very closely linked to defense, and for those money that we need to support Ukraine. And with that, we now have the chance to invest in new defense technology, and the Bundeswehr needs to be bigger and better than it is now within the next few years. And this is a big program where Boris Pistorius, the defense minister, the foreign minister, Johann Wadefuhl, and the Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, are working hard on. We will see significant progress soon. But to have in mind, we took that decision in the Deutsche Bundestag that the state is allowed to do more than under the debt brake. But to be frank, the money has to be paid back, and it costs money to loan money, and therefore we as a parliamentarians will look very crucial on those points where we say we are giving more than usual. It will be a huge sum over the next years, but it will be very exact investigated by the Bundestag. Is it necessary or not?
Right. And since we are talking about defense, so let's just continue with that discussion because, in India, while we had in Europe a very important defense partner for decades, which is France, Germany has also become fairly important to India and will become, in coming time, in coming years and decades, I think Germany will also become more important. But all of that started with, when your foreign defense minister, Boris Pistorius, visited India and removed uh, the regulations that you had on exporting arms to India. So could you also tell me a little bit on progress made on that front? Because how does all this new outlook on defense and security also opens up, let's say, pathways of defense cooperation with countries like India?
Yeah. I was witness of that development in the German politics. It was a former government, but the same
Yes.
defense minister.
And
who
he's
is
still
preserved.
continuing,
He
right?
is still
Yes, yeah,
continuing,
yeah.
and in the new formation we have now in the Deutsche Bundestag as a government coalition. And the decision was right and necessary that Germany lifts restrictions on weapon export to India to make clear that India, if they need weapons for their defense and to modernize their army or navy or air force, that they can trust on Germany. One question was urgent 3 years ago: should German company be allowed to participate in a tender for the new submarines for the Indian Navy?
Yeah.
The decision is now close by. I've learned.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about how might make the race, but potentially German TKMS will be in the pole position. I had the feeling 3 years ago when I was in Mumbai with the Navy that the commanders of Indian submarines would prefer German submarines, new German submarines.
Right.
And we also in Germany have a lack in ammunition and in other goods of our Bundeswehr, and therefore I think there will be also import from military equipment from India to Germany, because we need so much new equipment, and maybe it will not be aircraft or tanks, but it will be several other things that can be built in India as good as in other parts of
No, you're right.
NATO world.
No, you're right there, Mr. Hart, because I think not many people also realize generally that about defense industry. Actually, we land up sending more than 51% of our defense exports to the United States, which is a very advanced Western market. And then we send quite a lot of defense exports to, France and other players in Europe. But the thing there to understand, as you rightly mentioned, is that this is not about complete platforms. Of course, by that logic, we are only sending most of our defense equipment to a country like Armenia. But there is a big market which is untapped, which is for, the secondary equipment, for different kinds of, other components. And Europe has a huge market for that. And you're absolutely right that this is an area that we can really truly explore the two sides, and there is enough political will as well. I think for the benefit of the viewers, I think what Mr. Hart is referring to is India's largest strategic partnership model, which has been finalized between TKMS, which is a German submarine making group, with India's Moscow TOC, and this is for the air independent propulsion submarines, conventional submarines for India. So that, of course, has been
The
backed
best
by
in the
Germany.
world, I can tell you as a former Navy officer.
Okay, so that's another feather in your cap. That apart from being a career parliamentarian, you're a former naval
It's
officer as
long
well.
time ago. I was in a better shape and much younger at that time.
Okay, it's great to know that you've been a former naval officer. But just I want to sort of circle back to Donald Trump and of course his tariffs. And before the punitive tariffs were unleashed on India, we were also following here the trade deal that Ms. Ursula von der Leyen had with Donald Trump in Scotland, which is the trade deal that you had with them, the European Union, where he put 15% tariffs, as well as a promise of about $600 to $700 billion worth of investment in the US. But then very soon we also heard a lot of pushback, from bigger economies such as France or Germany. What are your views on that? And why do you think you have to agree to something of this kind of a compromise?
First, I would like to say that German industry was very much worried about what should be the outcome of Trump's plan on tariffs on products from Europe. The European Union also has some things potentially we can use to compensate that by doing our own activities against trade from US to Europe. But this is not what we want to do. We want to have good trade relations. And therefore, the 15% we have now for European goods in US is hopefully the upper ceiling, so that we probably can reach that it will be not increased anymore. And second, that probably we will see in some fields that they might potentially reduced.
Okay.
The idea of Ursula von der Leyen that European companies should invest in US, this was pre-discussed with the heads of state, but clearly Germany, France, Netherlands, Denmark, they are free market economies, and the business people, the entrepreneurs have to decide where they invest or not. And there are some plans to invest in US. Germany is one of the biggest investors in US. By the way, the company that is exporting most of the cars by value from US into the world is not BMW, it's not Ford, it's not General Motors, it's BMW, the German company from South Carolina, and we have Mercedes and Volkswagen also in US, and they will increase their investment there, others also. We say in Europe that we don't want to raise tariffs for digital services. This is where US has a huge trade surplus to Europe that compensates the trade deficit on goods. On the other hand, very significantly, this is something Trump very seldom mentioned. Probably he didn't know about, but we always explain it to him. And I think we now have a new basis for discussion, and the perspective should be that we come away from these high tariffs, and this probably then can also be a role model for tariffs of Donald Trump to other countries, because he sees that low tariffs are not harming but benefiting to the US industry and to the US welfare. Then probably he might see that his strategy is not the best.
Right, but it's how much or how far would you agree with this perception that this is also a studied compromise, and it has been done keeping in mind the fact that that is also perhaps the only way to keep the United States on your side as you sort of go on supporting Ukraine and modernizing yourself and modernizing NATO, because it is unprecedented that European countries have agreed to a 5% of the GDP to defense spending, and especially NATO. Do you think that is also playing a role there?
I think the mind and mood between Washington and the Europe capitals would be much worse if we would not have reached that solution on the The Hague NATO summit in June. But we do that for us. I always explain to my people in Germany, we are not doing more investment in defense to please the US president. We are doing that because we need to be stronger military-wise. We need to be so strong that nobody ever might have the idea he could attack us, and we never want to use those weapons. We want to throw them away after 30 years or so, but we have to invest, and we do it for our own security. And the burden sharing between US on one hand and the others in NATO on the other hand, which is mainly European states, was not fair over the decades, and it was always a topic on the agenda of politics, transatlantic-wise. And now we see, due to the challenge from Russia, that we will step forward. And this is, by the way, an unanimous decision of all the members of NATO. I think 32 NATO members we have, to increase defense expenditures by up to 3.5, plus 5.5% for defense-related infrastructure.
And just as I'm speaking about this one crucial relationship that you have with the United States of America, the other crucial relationship that we want to understand better is your relationship with China and your dependence on China. And just around the time that Mr. Trump and Ms. von der Leyen had this deal in Scotland, I think it was just days before that or weeks before that, that the EU-China summit also happened. Where do you see this entire discourse of de-risking from China going? Do you think it is possible, it is happening, and especially amidst what is happening in the world today with so much uncertainty and all the trade wars? How do you sort of make sense of all that in your relationship with China?
First, I would like to state that we see China as a partner, but also as a competitor and a rival. In the number of fields where we see a rivalry with China is coming bigger and bigger, because the Chinese government is more and more combining political goals with economic goals. And if China wants to conquer a market wherever in the world, for example, electric cars, then he invests as much as it can and put prices on the market that are far below the costs and therefore not fair. And what we need is more fair trade with China, a better framework for our cooperation in the future. But on the other hand, we are depending on China economic-wise in some fields. I think India too, and America at first, and China is depending a lot on that good trade relations, because the Chinese government needs that good trade relations and the benefits and profits from that trade relations to please the people in China. That Chinese government is a dictatorship, a party dictatorship, and so to say, the reason why people accept that is that most of the people say, okay, my welfare is increasing, and therefore I accept that they are doing their way of politics. But if the party is not able to fulfill that proposal, there might be a huge debate in China on not only on economics but also on the political system. And this is what the Chinese government fears. And therefore, I think we should give more clear sidelines for our trade relations. And Italy, it would be good to have partners that have the same ideas that we can present to China, so that we don't overwhelm China with unacceptable demand on new regulation, but that we come to a point where China says, okay, if we accept this and this and this and this, and maybe the others commit to continue as a good trade relation, then both sides have something. Unfortunately, the summit, European Union with China, was not really successful. Normally, those meetings were over some days. I think this meeting was only one day. There was no real concrete decisions. There's a lot of work to do, but I think if we cooperate, the democracies in the world, the free market economies in the world, G7 plus India, plus others, Korea, for example, and have a common idea how world trade with China should be continued in the next years and next decade, it would be a good option. But unfortunately, now we are in a situation where we have not time and leisure to think about strategy processes.
I mean, I understand that time is a vector for everybody, but very, very briefly, if you could just tell me how you're handling the challenge of especially the rare earth magnets, because that is something which is so crucial, to all the EV industry and everything. And China has put a hold on the export of especially the magnets to the United States. India is also in a similar position. How are you handling it there in Europe and in Germany?
It's also a crucial point for Germany. We have a lot of industries. They have this magnets done by this raw earth minerals on stock. But someday they will run out of stock, and 99% of the world market is driven by China. We need more diversification, but a German government already under Angela Merkel tried to do that. We had German agreements, a partnership with countries like Mongolia and like Kazakhstan. For example, I know about on investment in raw earth development. But in our free market economies, we need business partners that are doing that. And if they say, why should I invest into a $100 million joint venture with a Kazakh company to mine raw earth when I can get the magnet for 3 cents from China? Business-wise, it might not work out on the short view. It might work out on the strategic view, and I have not an answer yet how we can activate that industry is using the potential ways to diversify, especially in those critical goods. We should help them, but at the end of the day, the owners and the CEOs of those companies are responsible to make sure that their supply chain is sustainable.
Yeah, and of course I have to ask you about Ukraine, because what has also happened in the last few months, and especially after the coming of Chancellor Friedrich Merz, is that Germany has sort of come up as one of the staunchest supporters of Ukrainian security. So just a few questions on the Ukraine war. As you know that President Trump and President Putin are readying for a summit in Alaska, if I'm not wrong, where they are discussing what should be happening in the Ukraine war. I mean, what is your position on that, generally, on how you are planning to support Ukraine? How do you think that peace could be arrived at, a peace deal could be arrived at? What is going to sustainably work? Because it's not just about announcing a ceasefire. That has happened so many times in the past and it has not worked. So from your perspective, how do you see a stable peace returning to Ukraine, given all the situation that we have?
Whatever the two heads of state might discuss on Friday, 15th of August in Alaska, for us in Europe, it's important that Ukraine can say yes to such a deal, because we don't know at the moment what might be the outcome, or maybe there will be no outcome on Friday, but in a positive, if it works positive, there might be something upcoming after that. For us, the standard is does the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government can live with that. From the European perspective, we should not allow that Putin sees that he declares that he might have won the war against Ukraine, because this is only an appetizer to do more in the next few years. He is increasing its military equipment significantly, not only the weapons he needs against Ukraine, but also in other fields, high-speed missiles, and the economy in Russia is totally focused on armament, which is a huge burden for the people in Russia, because they now lack on other goods. They have a huge loss in people by that war. I think a six-digit number of soldiers fell in the war against Ukraine. This foolish and illegal war that doesn't help anything to bring Russia forward. It's only a burden on the shoulders of Russian people, and I think we should make Ukraine as strong as possible so that Ukraine can face this challenge. Ukraine is not asking for any square meter of Russian territory. They only want to have the security for their borders, as they were stated in several international treaties, by the way, also from Russia with Ukraine in '94, when Ukraine gave its nuclear weapons to Russia. And the deal was, therefore, we accept your borders. Russia is not trustful on that, and therefore we say, in case we must come on a point where Putin sees there's a risk that it might become a failure for him, militarily or at home, when people are asking what is it for. Then if Ukraine is so strong that you have to have in mind it might gone wrong, can go wrong, then he probably will be able and willing to do a fair peace treaty, accepting the borders with Ukraine, accepting good relationships, good neighborhood relationships to Ukraine and others, which would be a favor and a pleasure also, especially for people in Russia, because Russia is performing relatively bad compared to all the other states that came out of the communism. Russia is by far behind that what others, Poland, the Baltic states, and so on, reached after end of communism. And maybe once a day, people in Russia will ask, what was in for us with that president. Yeah.
Right, and of course, from the European theatre, I have to bring you now to the Indo-Pacific theatre. And the question that I have for you, Mr. Hart, is that the previous government in Germany, they brought out an Indo-Pacific strategy, and Germany happens to be also one of the few countries within Europe to have a well-formulated Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, my question to you is that while you have so many challenges back in the continent, with respect to what Donald Trump is doing, and then the war situation in East Ukraine, and your own, other economic challenges in the world, how much of bandwidth do you think that your government is going to have when it comes to, reinforcing their presence and engagement of the Indo-Pacific? Wouldn't your own continent, take away most of your resources and time?
Now we have several challenges parallel, and some need the same resources.
Okay.
But I'm happy about that the German Bundeswehr was able to travel to India and to Far East Sea with a German frigate twice in the last few years. That we were able to do a big military exercise of our air forces, the Indian Air Force, the German Air Force, and other NATO air forces in the Nur. A huge exercise. The first we had of that type was myself was eyewitness of what happened there, and this are encouraging. At the end, every country has to do an assessment of what is our opportunities, our chances, and what are our threats,
Okay.
and then looking about who can help us to solve that. Maybe German industry for submarines, because India needs more submarines when Chinese are doing more in the waters around India. Just to give one example, and building alliances among those who wants to have stability, freedom, and peace in the world, and encourage others to participate. And I think we have a chance to reach that in cooperation with Europe, India, and states of the Southeast Asian.
So if I read that correctly, I think we will see a more sustained German interest and engagement of the Indo-Pacific region. And just, I think perhaps my last question to you is that what do you see or what do you think about other avenues of cooperation between Germany and India? I mean, a lot has changed already. We see far more number of Indian students now going to Germany, and many more things coming up. But would you like to reflect on that? I mean, what are the other avenues of cooperation between our two countries?
This is we already talked about the multilateral things, but now we talk about bilateral relations.
We are already our biggest trading partner in Europe.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we will see German politicians more often in India.
So is the Chancellor coming to India anytime soon?
I expect that he will be also travel to India soon. The Foreign Minister will travel to India soon. He is already he was already in close contact to the Foreign Minister of India when we were in opposition. We met him regularly on the Munich Security Conference. He's also the Foreign Minister is also familiar with Friedrich Merz because they met last year in Munich, and the contact between Prime Minister Modi and Chancellor Friedrich Merz is also very good. They had good talks on international meetings already, and I expect that we can also activate and stimulate and incent German industry to do more in India. They say, it's sometimes difficult. We have to start from the scratch, and India is a big country, and all the things and I then asked them, how was it in China 50 years ago? Was it easy?
Yeah.
Do you think that it is more difficult in India now than it was in China 50 years ago?
Yeah.
Everybody says no. And then I asked the second question: do you think that it will take another 50 years to bring your business in India to the point where your Chinese business now is? They also say no, because it will go faster. And India is the biggest country in the world. India is
also the youngest country in the world.
And also the youngest country in the world. India is from the economic power comparable with Germany and Japan.
And the democracy.
And in democracy, India is significantly bigger than Germany, therefore the per capita income is very much lower, but the perspective how it can improve is huge. And all experts tell us that India's growth, economic-wise, will be significant. India's growth, by the way, also in population will not as extreme as in other countries because it's a developed country and you have a handing of that, and China will go down, and India will be far bigger than China, not as only as a market but also in headcount, and therefore India is number one for our engagement in the region. And it's true, the biggest group among students from abroad in Germany is now from India.
Yes.
And one of the demands of the foreign minister is always give us more chances to educate young Indians in German language, though that they are able to go to Germany. You can study in Germany also with English language, but to live in Germany, it's difficult with only English. We have this nation language, German in Germany, and therefore if you want to study and perform and work in Germany, you should have German language skills, and we both, Germany and India, should work on making German language more important in schools and institutes in India.
Well, on that note, I think we have ended on a very positive note here, and we look forward to welcoming the foreign minister and then eventually the Chancellor Friedrich Merz himself to India. And I'm also of the opinion that actually Germany-India relations have a lot of potential which is untapped and which should be realized as we go ahead. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Jürgen Hart. It was a pleasure and a privilege to speak to you, and I hope you had a very good time in India. Look forward to having you here again.
Thank you very much.
You are watching The Print Worldview with Swasti, and stay tuned for yet another episode.